So Cory Booker was asked about his position on healthcare. Now, he's going to start out pretty solid here, but then he drives the car into a ditch.
After 43 years of working as a nurse, I now find that I'm disabled. My medications and my physician costs are astronomical. I have Medicare and private insurance, but they're expensive and they still don't cover my cost. The current administration thinks that the free market is the best route for people. Just put some money aside, they say, and it'll cover my medical expenses. Problem is, where's that money coming from? Can you explain to us, sir, how you're going to help folks like me who have worked and paid into the system with how are we going to do this?
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Yes. And your struggle, some days I'm sure, like a lot of Americans, you feel alone in it, but this is one of those things. All across our country, there are people struggling with the same issues with you. In a system that is the most expensive system on the planet Earth, we spend about 18 to 20% of our GDP on healthcare, and we still have folks that are struggling just to get by because our system, all that money we're spending doesn't go to patient care, doesn't go to support folks like you. This is a broken system, and we must fix it. And so if I'm your president, I'm going to make sure that we deal with this. Now, the ideal in our country is that everyone should have access to healthcare. Healthcare is an American right, and the current system is definitely wrong. I believe the best way to get there is by having Medicare for all. But anybody who says that in politics, they need to get to some explaining, because that's an ideal that we have to show a pathway to get there through practical things that aren't going to make people's situations worse, but help it get better. So here's some things that we can do in the first year, should I be your president. Number one, those drugs and those expenses that you're talking about, that is outrageous. Too many Americans put aside life-saving drugs because they can't afford them. We can drive those prices down doing common sense things that even Republicans talk about, but we're not getting done. Those are things like using Medicare's bargaining power to drive down costs. That means allowing, on a bill that I wrote with Senator Sanders and Senator Casey, allowing imports from other countries safely. And I'll tell you what, we're going to drive down drug prices by doing what other countries do. They simply say that if you're going to have a drug in their country and raise the price in their country higher than others, there are going to be penalties for that. Well, if I'm president of the United States and you raise your drug prices higher than is in other countries, we're going to have a definite penalty. We're going to take away your patent and let generics come in and undercut those prices. And I want to give you one more example. And something, again, common sense. You know, on our way to getting to Medicare for all, we could just lower Medicare eligibility to 55, allowing people to have it as an option to buy into. Even companies can use that as an option. And what that's going to do is not only giving folks like you lower costs, but it also, for those folks who are left in private pools, by pulling the older folks out, it's going to actually make those healthier pools and drive down the costs. There are many common sense things we can do on the glide path to our goal of healthcare for everyone. And the most important thing is to relieve the financial burden on too many families that are hurting in the most expensive system on the planet Earth that fails to produce the kind of outcomes that this nation deserves for all of its citizens.
Okay, so if you don't understand why that answer is problematic, it's okay. I'm going to walk you through it, because it's understandable for somebody who's not a policy wonk and doesn't live, eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff to listen there and go, I don't know, I didn't hear anything wrong. He said he's for Medicare for all, and so what's the big deal? How can you criticize that? Well, the answer is very simple. So what's happening is the Democratic establishment is fully aware that the energy is on the left flank of the party. The energy is with the populist left, the anti-corruption progressives, the real hardcore base. And since that's the case, they know, all right, well, last time it was attempted with Hillary to basically placate those people and say, we have you anyway, now we're going to run to the right and try to get moderates. And so they picked Tim Kaine for VP, and her rhetoric was cringeworthy, and she alienated her own base. And so they know that failed. So now corporatists are getting more clever. You see, like, Kamala and Kirsten Gillibrand are using the rhetoric of Medicare for all, and they're using the rhetoric of no corporate PAC money. Now, there are loopholes, though. When they say that, they don't mean like I'm not going to accept big money. They mean, no, literally just corporate PACs. I am going to accept big money through big money bundling dinners, which is almost as corrupt as just through corporate PACs. So there's loopholes and there's weasel words. Now, Cory Booker was honest there, and in his honesty, he showed you what he would do when push comes to shove. So first of all, notice he says, well, yeah, I'm for Medicare for all, but we have to show a pathway to get there. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, he goes on to explain. Well, we could start with, lowering the Medicare eligibility age to 55. That's a good idea. We can start with, he basically says trying a public option. So there are a plethora of Democratic bills on healthcare that have been proposed. There's Medicare for all. There's Medicare for America. There's Medicare for all plus or something. Medicare for all expanded. There's all these different ones, and bottom line is this. Every single one, except for the Bernie one and the Pramila Jayapal one, there's a handful that are like, this is the real deal. But all the other ones are bullshit half measures concocted in a back room with the input of for-profit health insurance companies and big pharma. And what they're trying to do is gaslight the left. And this reminds me of when there was a lot of energy behind the idea of getting money out of politics, and the base was getting a lot stronger with that rhetoric. So what happened? Instead of trying to quell the movement towards a constitutional amendment to really get big money out of politics, what they did is the Democrats stepped up and said, we're going to propose overturning Citizens United. Now, that sounds good, right? That's actually not the end-all be-all, though. That's an attempt to gaslight the left because we were already corrupt before Citizens United. Citizens United shot a dead horse, man. You got to go all the way back to Buckley versus Vallejo and First Bank of Boston versus Bilotti to really see when money started equaling free speech. And it didn't start with Citizens United. So when corporate Democrats said, we're against Citizens United, we're going to overturn it, they're gaslighting you. Because what they're saying is, I'm in favor of the corruption, but just, have some limits on it, some caps, and also give some more transparency. It's like when Hillary used to say, we need to get the dark, unaccountable money out of politics. Sounds good, right? Well, why did she add the words dark and unaccountable out of it? Why'd you add those two words? You could just say, let's get money out of politics. Let's get private money out of politics, do clean elections with public financing. She didn't say that, though. She said dark, unaccountable money out of politics. Why add dark and unaccountable? Because what that means is, I just want more transparency. I want to keep the corruption, but just so you know who's buying the politicians, let's have transparency laws. That's all she meant. When they say let's overturn Citizens United, all they mean is let's have a few more caps here and there, but still keep the root of the problem, which is corruption. So now the new gaslighting trick when it comes to Medicare for all is, and you'll see Elizabeth Warren do this too, and I like Elizabeth Warren, but she's dead wrong on this issue, and she's either naive or she's trying to play you. I think in her case it's more naive. But she does this whole shtick of like, well, what we have to understand is the real evil on this issue is the Republicans. They're so bad. And the Democrats all agree to the core of it, which is get everybody covered in this country. And so we have a whole bunch of different ideas to get to that conclusion. And some people support a public option. Some people support lowering the Medicare age. Some people support increasing the Medicaid cap or starting to allow people into Medicaid or Medicare from when they're younger. Some it's the bottom up. Sometimes it's the top down. Sometimes it's the opt-in. But we're all working towards the same thing. That is not true, Liz. You're not all working towards the same thing. Because the corporate Democrat would do a plan like, okay, let's have the Medicare eligibility go to age 55. They'd do that and then they'd go, done. There, we got our healthcare reform. Shut the fuck up. 55 years and up, now you can get into Medicare, which is better than nothing, but you're still leaving millions of people out to dry. You're still going to have millions of people uninsured. You're still going to have unaffordable premiums and deductibles. And there are still going to be, the root problem is still there, which is the for-profit health insurance companies are destroying the system because all they care about is profit. So when Cory Booker starts out by saying, oh yeah, Medicare for all, that's the ultimate goal, but, what's the but? We need a pathway to get there. And what's that pathway? Well, we could do lower Medicare eligibility to 55 or try a public option. No, because what happens if you do that? First of all, you're letting the right know, I'm going to concede up front. I'm cool with just doing that. You want to just do lower Medicare to 55? So you're going to concede up front, but furthermore, you're going to waste all your political capital yet again doing a half measure. So they fundamentally get this issue wrong. What you have to do is go hard in the other direction. You got to do what Bernie does, which is overreach. Ask for too much. So, the best thing you can do really is saying, here's what I'm in favor of. An NHS-style system. Why? That's the UK-style system. That's public funding of public institutions. So, yeah, the Republicans fearmonger about government-run healthcare. Damn right it's government-run healthcare, and it's going to be better, and we have the evidence, we have the proof, because the UK already does it, and they kick our ass in every conceivable way. That's our position. We're not budging. So that should be the starting position. And then, you should get all the Democrats on that page. If you can't, fine, you make some trade-offs behind the scenes, and here's the trade-off you make. The Blue Dog Democrats say they won't support this bill because it's a government takeover healthcare, and they don't think that they'll be reelected in their district, so... Number one, I'll tell them, I'll fight you if you don't vote for it. Like, I'll go campaign against you. If you're president of the United States, I'll campaign against you. And I'll make sure that you get primaried, and I'll make sure you lose. Because you need to vote for this, and the polls show 70% of Americans are for it. So shut the fuck up and fall in line. That's the first thing you do. But the second thing you do is, fine, I'll be reasonable. You want to make a trade-off? Let's make a trade-off. We're going to do a Medicare for all system, but it's going to be public funding of private entities. So it's not going to be the NHS-style system. It's going to be more the French-style system or the Canadian-style system, where you still have private providers, but it's publicly funded. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. This is how you get it done. This is how you get Medicare for all done. You're going to get nothing done if you say, well, the ultimate goal is Medicare for all, but I can't wait to maybe just have a pathway and say only 55 and up for Medicare, and then maybe just a public option. Listen to me. Listen to me, Cory. As you say this, as you fucking try to play politics and tap dance around it, guess what? People are dying. They are dying. 45,000 people die every year because they don't have access to basic health care. It's anywhere from 32 to 45, depending on the year. That's insane. That's a scandal. That should never happen in this country, ever, ever. And it's happening right now. And you're not treating it like the scandal it is. You're treating it like, well, we have a buffet of options and we all agree on eventually getting to the main goal. No! You need to go out there and make a moral case for the right perspective and the right policy on this, which is Medicare for all. You need to be unapologetic. You need to be a swashbuckling leftist who takes no prisoners, but you're just not that. And even when people chipped away on your bullshit, you're still ultimately at, ultimately the goal is Medicare for all, but maybe we try to get a pathway in 55 and... Final point. He said in there, well, there's other things we need to do too. Like, we got to go after Big Pharma and have them, lower the cost of the prescription drugs. Dude, you're Cory Booker. The most famous moment you had in the past 2 or 3 years was when you decided you were going to vote against reimportation of pharmaceutical drugs from Canada, which would have lowered the cost massively. It was a Bernie Sanders amendment. And then when you were caught, you lied. You came out and said, well, the reason why I don't support it is because it's no regulation. The drug's got to be safe. FDA's got to regulate it. That's why I was against this. Yeah, that's it. Canada has stricter regulations than we do. Are you sure? The drugs coming in from Canada? Are you serious? You think, the tainted drugs from Canada are a fucking scourge on this country. It's our drugs anyway. We ship them there. And they get them way cheaper, and of course they're safe. They have stricter safety regulations than we do. So what are you talking about? It's a dodge. It was a dodge. It was okay, progressive, shut the fuck up, get off my back. Yes, I'm the number one recipient of pharma money, but no, it didn't influence my vote on that issue. Yes, it did. And then afterwards, you panicked, and you flipped, and you went to the right side of the issue, not for moral reasons, but because you wanted to save your ass politically, because we all knew you wanted to run for president, and you had to clean up your record before you ran for president, because it was too obvious you were a corrupt asshole. And that's where we are. So take your half measures, take your, well, what about the pathway, and shove it. Because this is a radical time in this country's history. And if you're not acknowledging that, then you're delusional. And it's time for a transformational presidency, not a milquetoast centrist, which is exactly what you are.